Everyone thought Harrison was a saint for nursing his dying brother for 15 years. They called it unbreakable loyalty. They were wrong. It wasn't loyalty. It was a heist. The real story started when his older brother Arthur was diagnosed with a degenerative spine condition. Arthur had built a fortune and a reputation that made people nervous even when he was healthy. Sick, he became something worse. Demanding, bitter, controlling, while the rest of the family quietly relocated to Florida and Scottsdale, sending the occasional greeting card and short phone calls filled with polite concern. Harrison stayed behind in that massive house that felt bigger every year. He stayed for one reason everyone admired, and one reason no one understood. For 5,475 days, Harrison handled everything. The bedpans, the medications, the screaming fits in the middle of the night, the insults that didn't stop even when Arthur's voice grew weak. Holidays came and went with the same quiet script. A phone call, compliment. "You're an angel, Harry. We don't know how you do it." What they meant was simple. Better you than us. Arthur didn't just need care. He needed control. And he made sure Harrison felt it. One night, when the house was silent and the air felt heavy, Arthur called Harrison into the room and handed him a document. "Read it," Arthur said. It was his will. Harrison stood there, reading every word out loud. The estate, the properties, the investments, millions, and then the line that changed everything. Harrison was excluded. Everything was being left to a foundation. Arthur watched him closely, waiting for something. Anger, shock, a reaction. Instead, Harrison simply added just Arthur's pillow and said, "I do it because I'm the only one left." Arthur smiled. He thought he had won. Not long after, the phone calls started coming more often. Not about Arthur. Not really. Diane wanted to know if the paintings were still hanging in the hallway. Robert asked about the lake house and whether the deed was secured. They spoke like investors checking on assets they hadn't seen in years. Harrison played his role perfectly. He told them the house was deteriorating, that things were aging, that the upkeep was expensive. He sounded tired, broke, worn down, exactly what they expected him to be, and that made them comfortable. What they didn't see was what was happening quietly behind closed doors. Arthur's condition worsened. His memory started to slip in small, almost invisible ways. One afternoon, he signed a document Harrison placed in front of him. He thought it was routine. Bills, utilities, something minor. It wasn't. It was power of attorney, and Harrison read every line of it. There was no restriction, no limitation, nothing stopping him from making decisions Arthur would never have approved if he were fully aware. That's when the real story began. While Diane was planning her next vacation, talking casually about what she would do with her share, Harrison was meeting with people who didn't ask questions. Quiet transactions. Late-night meetings, assets shifting hands without drawing attention. The mansion didn't change overnight. That would have been too obvious. It happened slowly. Original paintings replaced with near-perfect replicas. Jewelry swapped. Property transferred through companies no one in the family had ever heard of. Every time Arthur raised his voice, every time he insulted him, every time he reminded Harrison that he would receive nothing, Harrison moved another piece. Not loudly, not recklessly, carefully, precisely. By the time Arthur took his final breath, the house still looked the same to anyone who hadn't really been paying attention. And the family arrived exactly as expected. Polite grief that didn't quite reach their eyes. They moved through the house like they were already measuring it. Diane found Harrison in the kitchen. She didn't hug him. She didn't thank him. She made an offer, $5,000, to help him move out. She said it like it was generosity, like she was doing him a favor. Harrison looked at her. His eyes were tired, red, but steady, and he thanked her. The day of the will reading felt like a formality to them. They already believed they knew the outcome. The lawyer sat at the head of the table. The documents were placed neatly in front of him. He began reading, and then he stopped. Something wasn't right. He flipped pages, checked figures, adjusted his glasses. The room shifted. The accounts were empty. The real estate had been sold years earlier. The jewelry worthless. The estate wasn't just gone. It was in debt. Silence hit the room first, then chaos. Voices rose. Accusations came fast. Diane turned on Harrison. Robert demanded answers. Harrison didn't argue. He reached into his bag and pulled out a logbook. Every day, every hour, every expense. 15 years documented in careful detail. Medical bills, supplies, time, everything. He placed it on the table. Then he stood up. And for the first time in 15 years, he didn't look tired. Arthur disinherited him years ago. He had known. He had stayed anyway. Not out of loyalty, not out of love, but because he understood something the rest of them never did. If there was no inheritance, then the only way to be paid was to take it himself. He looked at them one last time, calm, certain. I stayed for my back pay. You stayed for a prize that never existed. The difference is, I already got mine. And then he walked out. He left them with a mansion they couldn't afford, a name that meant nothing, and the realization that the man they called a saint had been something else entirely. So the question isn't what Harrison did. The question is why. Was he a thief who took what wasn't his? Or was he a man who finally collected a debt no one else was willing to pay? If you were in his place, would you have stayed? Or would you have done exactly the same thing?